Okay, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I think we're going to start here. Thank you very, very much for joining. This is the third online meeting of the Gender and Forestry Community of Practice. This meeting is a collaboration. And sorry, if you could please.
Dans le cadre d'une collaboration, veuillez.
This meeting and this community of practice is a collaboration between WABILED, the West Africa Biodiversity and Low Emission Development Program of USAID, and also the Global Transformation for People and Climate project of FAO, which is a collaboration with ECOWAS and with Swedish Sida. My name is Amanda Bradley, and I will be the moderator today. I am a consultant at FAO based in Rome, and I advise the FAO project on the gender aspects. If I can ask everybody to kindly mute your microphones when you're not speaking, so we avoid the noise in the background. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to quickly run through our agenda. Hopefully we'll have an opening greeting from my colleague, Mr. Mohamedou Aw, who's the program officer for the FAO project. Then
yes, I'm
we
here.
will.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
great. Thank you. Thanks, Al. Welcome. After that, we'll move to have a presentation from Diana Ndego, who is the Gender Equality Specialist for the WABILED project. She'll be speaking to us about the global landscape for financing gender and forestry work. Next, we'll have some Q&A after that. Then we'll have a presentation from Loretta Pope-Kai, who is the Executive Director for the Foundation for Community Initiatives in Liberia, and she'll be sharing some of her personal experience on fundraising and donor engagement. After that, we will have Pius Asante, who is the Regional Gender Specialist for FAO. He'll be facilitating some Q&A and also tips from the floor. After that, we have a final presentation from Jose Martino, who is a communication specialist with FAO here in Rome. And then finally, we'll have a wrap up from Edna Freeman, who's a WABILED administrative officer and member of the gender team. So we have French interpretation today, which you can access through the icon at the bottom of your screen that looks like a small globe. I invite everybody to please make your brief introduction in the chat box, which you can also access through the icon at the bottom of your screen. And also, as the presenters are presenting, we ask you to please mute your microphones. And if a question comes up, you can write it in the chat. We'll be keeping tabs on the chat. And just to say finally that we'll be recording the session, so just to make you aware of that. So next, I would turn the microphone over to my colleague Mohamedou Aw, the program officer for FAO. Thanks, Al.
Let me see if I can make my. If you can see me from my video. Can you see me or is? No. Not
yet.
Yeah, it's always a challenge for me to be seen on the screen. Anyway, if it doesn't work, I'll go ahead because we have a time issue here.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, and greetings and good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're from, you attending the meeting from. I would like just on behalf of the looks like it's coming. Let's see. It's not good, but anyway, that's fine. So I would like just on behalf of the sub-regional coordinator for West Africa Dr. Gay, who is actually wasn't able to attend this meeting, to wish everybody first happy year 2024, but also to welcome you to this important meeting and thank you for taking time for your busy schedule to attend it. So tips and tricks to access the funding for gender and forestry work is an important topic. As you know, resources are limited and the needs are growing. Times are difficult for even areas that actually draw a lot of funding, such as emergency responses, let alone topics that normally should be very sexy, but unfortunately we cannot make them as sexy enough for the donors to collect money, which is gender and forestry. This is an important topic. This is important because also it was chosen as a priority topic for by most of you here through the survey that was done after the second meeting to ensure that actually what kind of a topic for the third meeting that for this one, and actually overwhelmingly everybody chose funding or financing for gender activities and forestry. But also when we had our orientation workshop, mostly with the community forestry initiatives, that also came up as a strong topic. And also during the practitioners workshop, in which actually most of you have participated also, it came in as a very a need that had been expressed loudly by every people who were there. And actually, Loretta was there and she can attest to that. So it has been a notable progress in the devolution of forest management and user rights to local communities in West Africa over the past 10-15 minutes, with about 25% of West Africa forests being devolved to various degree at local communities. So when we talk about community forestry management, we all know the central role that women play in suitable use, in sustainable use and management of our systems. So in addition to accessing to land, accessing to financing by women will be crucial to empower them and autonomize them in their role for sustainable forest management, particularly in the case of that community forest management approach. So this meeting is a great opportunity for the participant to get tips and tricks on how to access this funding through important presentations as indicated in the agenda, one on mapping on the funding sources and opportunities from WABILED, or getting a concrete example from the field from Loretta, or talking how you can develop effective message to attract funders by FAO. So this meeting, through this presentation and the discussions that we will engage in, will be an opportunity to get the basics, but you will not get all the solution, but you will get the basics, identify the main funding sources, share experiences and good practices, and establish networks for effective collaboration. So this is an important event, as you know, that as I said earlier, that funding is a cornerstone for any activities. As in French, we call it the nerf de la guerre. And unfortunately, gender activities within forestry sector get less attention from the donors. So let's work together to change this and to ensure that actually we get the attention that we need, that we deserve. And I will encourage all of you to actively participate in our discussion and wish you all a fruitful and productive meeting. Thank you. I hope I didn't go over my 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Al, for that opening message and highlighting the importance of this topic. So since we have a very full agenda, I would like to move straight on to the presentation from Diana. Diana, would you be able to share your screen and go ahead? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Amanda. Quickly share my screen. Okay. Please, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see
Amanda
it.
and everyone, can you see me? Okay, thank you.
Yes, we can see you clearly. Diana, good morning.
Right. Good morning, Daniel.
This is Daniel Kasade.
Yes, Daniel, good
How are
morning
you?
and welcome. I'm fine. Okay, so I'll just go straight, knowing that we have 15 minutes for this. And Al has already set the pace for this. He's mentioned the fact that resources are not unlimited. So there's little we can all tap from in terms of funding gender and forestry in West Africa. But that notwithstanding, the interest on gender integration or gender mainstreaming in the context of forest conservation is also something that is of great importance or interest to a lot of donors. And so the purpose of this presentation is to throw some light on the different sources that we have identified for funding gender and forestry in West Africa, and to solicit feedback from participants in terms of what your experiences have been doing this thing in your work, finding funding for your work to address gender in the context of forestry. As I said, interest within the donor community is high, and so a lot more attention is given to integrating gender. And some of the key areas that, or some of the focus areas for gender and forestry funding as identified have included the following: empowering women in forestry-related activities. Let me minimize this. Empowering women in forest-related activities, enhancing access to resources and decision-making for women, particularly getting women to be actively involved in forest and resource governance, promoting sustainable land management practices for women, and in the context of gender, not just for women, but in the context of gender mainstreaming, capacity building programs that focus on education and training, and then the creation of opportunities for women in the forest value chains, right from cultivation up to market access, and then securing land rights for women, an important subject for within the forest conservation context. And then lastly, a key focus area for forestry, gender and forestry funding is also supporting women-led enterprises in the forest sector. So helping women in the non-timber value chain processing and all that. This is closely linked to creating opportunities in value chains for women. So these are broadly the key focus areas for gender and forestry funding in West Africa. We
Excuse me,
identified quite a
Diana?
number of, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Would you be able to put the presentation in presentation mode? So at the bottom of your screen on the right-hand side, you will see a very small little screen icon. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So is this okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So broadly, we identified 8 funding sources for gender and forestry in West Africa. And we have categorized these according to the level of support and the mode by which the funding is provided. We have the large funding agencies. We have foundations and funds that constitute a source for gender and forestry funding in West Africa. We have agency funding under development cooperation programs within the different embassies. We have a crowdfunding, which basically involves raising money from people, mainly through online sources. And some environmental charities use this approach for raising funds for their work. We also have a carbon finance, where projects can convert their impacts on carbon reduction to money. We also have microfinance, where loans and credit are provided or is provided to individuals or communities to engage in sustainable forests or conservation initiatives. We also have community economic activities such as green projects like tree nurseries and other green or environmentally sound investments that can generate funds for conservation initiatives. And then the last source of funding for gender and forestry is payment for ecosystem services. This is closely linked to the carbon finance mechanism or carbon finance source, whereby projects or communities are compensated for their efforts in terms of promoting environmental services. For the large funding source, so for each of these sources, what I'll attempt to do in the next few slides is to highlight a few points to note and provide some examples of the funding agencies or the sources that provide these kinds of funds for gender and forestry. So for the large funding agencies, in terms of the key points to note with these agencies is that they tend to require significant investments in proposal development, and they emphasize large-scale investment, often in partnership with government. And many of them are interested or they are required to support gender within their forestry program. So you find out that GEF projects, for example, require agencies to have policies or strategies that meet certain gender minimum requirements. And many of them, tend to have, many of the agencies that support these projects tend to have a very strong focus on gender programming as part of their core mandates. In terms of what opportunities agencies or organizations can derive from these funding agencies, you could explore options to, subcontract, for subcontracts, some activities that are designated. For example, opportunities to conduct gender analysis, opportunities to conduct gender trainings and all that, or generally subcontracts for activities that fall within your mandate as gender and forestry related organizations. Examples of some of these large funding agencies include the Global Environment Facility, GEF. It also includes the Green Climate Fund under the UNFCCC framework. It also includes the African Development Bank, which is an agency under the Global Environmental Facility. And also the IUCN. The IUCN has become a global leader in supporting conservation in the world. So it's also one of the large funding agencies for gender and conservation work. We also have others like the World Bank and some other examples that you are aware of, which are not included here. It's difficult to move my slides. Okay, for the next set of funding or source of funding for gender and forest is from foundations and funds. And foundations and funds, they basically they tend to be very competitive in terms of accessing funding from them. But once you have been able to establish a relationship with them, the possibility of continuous renewal of funding to your program is guaranteed. And for this level of funding, it is suggested that you have an initial introduction to the program officers of those program officers who manage the foundations or the funds. This is critical because it helps you to be able to align your project proposal with the requirements of the foundation and to put you at a more competitive edge in terms of accessing funding from this source for your work. And in developing your proposal, also, it is recommended to do a lot of research on the different foundations and funds that are available out there to ensure that you get one that directly targets or directly supports your kind of initiatives. And then also develop a high quality concept note or proposal that matches the priorities of the agency or the funding agency. And this is why I said earlier on that it is important to have an initial introduction to the program officers of the foundation so that they can provide you with some key information that will be useful in helping you to develop a high quality concept note or proposal that will match the requirements of the foundation and put you at a better edge in terms of accessing funding from foundations and for funding work on gender and forestry. There are a lot of examples under this, but basically you can look at the Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation. It's one of those, it's a foundation that supports community initiatives that address social and environmental issues. And then the International Tree Foundation, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, they also provide support for funding to NGOs to deliver community level projects that tackle deforestation and also improve local livelihoods through the use of trees and related income generation activities.
Diana,
For
just,
embassy
sorry,
funding.
excuse
Yes.
me, just to
Yes.
let you know, you have about 5 minutes left or so.
Okay, I'll just
Yeah.
clear on this. For
Thanks.
embassy funding, the interest is usually on women's empowerment. There's a high level of interest in women's empowerment. And here the suggestion is for you to avoid topics that are likely controversial. And then embassy funding also tend to favor events that have high level of visibility. So International Women's Day, 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, Rural Women's Day. These are key events that have high visibility. And so a lot of embassy funding tends to target some of these events. Of course, they also target conservation-related activities. And we have a number of them listed here. I wouldn't go through that for the sake of time. And crowdfunding also happens to be an important source of funding for gender and forestry. A number of environmental charities encourage their donors to use crowdfunding mechanisms to contribute to funding their charities or their, their initiatives. We have a number of them listed here. GoFundMe is very popular, and then Mighty Cause and the others. They are all different ways that resources are raised through crowdfunding for gender and conservation in West Africa. And then we have carbon financing, which I explained earlier on. That happens to be a major source of funding for gender and forestry in West Africa. In terms of the key points to note here, that is tend to require significant initial investment for project preparation and technical requirements. Carbon financing mechanisms have rigid or very technical requirements that you need to follow, right from design to accessing the credits that come with it. So they require a lot of preparation before, after, and during projects. And it usually takes some time to bring the project to market. Some 18 to 24 months is required to get this. There's a lot of interest, or there's increased interest in gender and women's benefit within carbon financing projects. And there's also the possibility of subcontracting for services like a gender analysis, gender training, gender audits, gender strategy development. We have a number of examples listed here. For the sake of time, I wouldn't go through them, but all these Plan Vivo, SD Vista, W+, and Equitable F, these are all standards that help projects to be able to access high quality carbon credits, and also to enhance the success of programs with funding from different donors who may require projects to meet any of these standards. So meeting any of these standards helps gender and development projects to be able to apply funding and to be able to meet the different levels of standards that could help you access funding from carbon financing. Then microfinance. The important thing about microfinance as a source of funding for gender and forestry is the fact that it can help to provide some cash injections into your project for new businesses, including forest-related enterprises for women, or NTFP value chains, forest enterprises, and all the microcredit programs help to provide that level of financial injection for you to acquire equipment, conduct training, and set up women in the related enterprises in forestry. But then they don't cover NGO facilitation costs in terms of how they benefit programs. A number of examples here include credits and loans from microfinance institutions. You have savings groups, whichever way you decide to call them, whether they are community savings groups, they are credit unions. They are important examples of microfinance sources for supporting gender and forestry in West Africa. And then, of course, we have community economic activities. These sources support local livelihood of men and women, but then they may require some strategic interventions to ensure that women benefit, some deliberate measures to ensure that women within community economic activities maximize the impact of interventions. So forming women's cooperatives, forming women's associations to be able to directly target them. And then, even conducting gender equality trainings and empowerment trainings for the women who's very important under this particular source of funding. Examples of community economic activities include tree nurseries that can generate some monies for activity, that can generate some income for gender and forestry, beekeeping activities, NTFP product sales, that's a non-wood forest product sales. A lot of them vegetable cultivation, basically examples of green enterprises that fall under this kind of category. The last but not least source is payment for environmental services, which is just closely linked to the carbon financing. And these, just like the carbon one, also tend to be longer. They are even longer term in terms of the duration. And there's also the challenge of identifying an interested buyer for the environmental services that we are able to generate as a result of our intervention or community interventions. But then the initiatives sometimes involve women. And in most of these mechanisms, there's always the need to deliberately target, as I mentioned in the previous point. And so some of these environmental services may involve women benefiting from empowerment activities. And the payments may also be channeled to support gender and forestry initiatives. Not all of them are channeled to supporting gender and forestry initiatives. Some of the payments are targeted towards developing community services for communities in terms of as a reward for the services that they have provided for ecological preservation or for environmental preservation. And I have a number of them listed here as well. So, but let me conclude by saying that this is not an exhaustive list. These are a list of funding sources that we have identified, and we are providing some suggestions on how different organizations can access these funding sources. I know that a lot of organizations here have some experience in terms of accessing the different levels of funding, and it would be important or it would be interesting to share that perspective so we understand what the challenges are and what the requirements are in terms of meeting some requirements to be able to make better use of these funding sources. Thank you so much for your attention. So back to you, Amanda.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much for that presentation, Diana. I don't see any questions in the chat right now, so I would like to suggest, as we're a bit tight on time, that we move directly to the next presentation, and then after that we'll have time for questions and comments from the floor. Diana, maybe you can stop sharing your screen, and I will invite the next speaker, who is Ms. Loretta Pope-Kai, the Executive Director from the Foundation for Community Initiatives in Liberia. And she's going to be sharing some of her personal experience as a director of an NGO in trying to raise funds for her organization. Are you there, Loretta?
Yes, thank you, Amanda.
Great.
I'm facing difficulty with my camera. I don't know why it's not showing live, but I'm seeing a still photo. So I think I'm going to go ahead with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
not
thank
to
you.
worry.
Hmm.
A
Thank
nice
you.
photo.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen.
And we will be able to share the presentations probably through the community of practice. I see that question coming up in the chat. So if anybody is not yet a member of our community of practice and you would like to be, you can share your WhatsApp telephone number either directly with me by email or in the chat. Okay, please, Loretta, go ahead. And please use the presentation mode.
Is that okay?
Yep, looks great.
Thank you, Amanda, and thanks to the team at WABILED and partners for this initiative. It's always good to bring us together to discuss the issues around gender and forestry, and I'm happy to be a part of this engagement. So I'm going to be presenting on fundraising and donor engagement at this online meeting. So I will begin with what is fundraising. Fundraising is generally defined as the process of soliciting financial support, and it's an essential way for most nonprofits to bring in revenue for their organization's mission. It is also about so much more than just asking for money. It also consists of ways for charitable organizations to build relationships, bring in foundation support, and attract new donors. And you can see my sources there. So developing a fundraising strategy is creating a detailed fundraising strategy gives you a clear idea of how to plan and execute a successful fundraising campaign that reaches its goals. So you must have a strategy. Start with the body of knowledge, research, reach out, collect data, investigate the issues, build networks, and ensure that you know exactly what you intend to do. Review your present fundraising processes and past campaign performance. Determine guidelines and goals. Assess your strengths and resources. Conduct research. Nail down your strategic essentials and write it in black and white. We have many thoughts, but most times we don't put it down and we forget. So it's always good in our strategy, we have a plan. So donor pitching, the who and how. And this is just a way of motivation to donor with a clear explanation on how you want to go and how you want to execute your mission and how you can describe the importance or needs that your organization feels. So this process in terms of what is your mission alignment. Most times we want to go for funding that is not aligned to our mission. When you are doing donor pitching, your donor pitching should be aligned with your mission, direct and indirect financial support. Example, you're starving. As a gender institution, we realize that most of our organization, we have limited women participation. We need more women and also men to support the process. But you cannot say that you are promoting gender and forest governance and knowing very well that women are at the front, and then you have more men fronting for women issue. Perspective and net profit. You also need to have a strong relationship building, institutional building, for example, skills and knowledge to carry out the activity. Your organization must have that. Institutional capacity, example, HIMO, you must have technology, financial, and other resources needed to carry out the activity. Your audience, when you are doing donor patient development and community research, example, introducing your organization to new audience. Also, identifying or doing a risk analysis of your organization, and then also looking at the opportunity cost. So, These are some of the tips for good concept note, but these are not limited. What we've done always is to research our problem. What do we hope to achieve? What is happening in the sector? What do we want to do when it comes to gender and forestry? We know very well that when it comes to the development of community forestry management plans, there are not clear outline on how women should participate or benefit from these resources. So before contacting your donor on this, you have to research the problem. What is happening? Why women are not participating? Why the community forestry management plan are not discussing issue or don't have a clear indicators? Develop outline and break it into understandable pieces. Consult professionals. Always consult professionals. No man is an island. You need people to review your work, and that we have always done to have a good result. We consult professionals. Develop an outline for your concept depending on donor expectation. So, what is the structure of our concept note? Our concept note is just straightforward. We have a title, introduction, a background, and I said again, there is not limited. This is just few. You have a goal and objectives, expected results, innovation, and budget. So how to maintain good donor relations? And this is also not crafting stone. We will have more inputs, but these are just few ways we've been working and how we've been being supported, or how we've been engaging our external partners and donors. So what do you need to do? You must have a clear and open communication, clear and direct. Honest communication is critical for any relationship. Donor has given you their money based on an emotional connection with your organization and its progress. So you must always communicate that and must have a clear visibility plan. Be responsive and follow up. As with any relationship, there will be problems and concerns that occur from time to time. Be responsible to any inquiries. Most time we don't want to take feedback. We always want to hear the good things, but when we have feedback and inquiries, we don't take our time to respond to it. And that is very, very much important. Being responsive to respond to inquiries. Deliver on your promises. One of the best insights is on making and delivering on your promises. And that is very, very key to our work. What you know you will do, you have to do that. And if you don't do that, it's always good to go back and communicate with the donor. Don't make your own decisions, but you have, as you build good relationship, from time in time, you need to communicate. Event attendance, make a special effort to get out to all or nearly all of your organization's special events. Always make a time to conduct these events and attend these events. Is also good for donor relations. Invite them to your events. Ensure that the event is well connected and you are very responsive in communicating to donor on these special occasion, because they want to be invited and they want to know what you are doing. So it's always good to invite them to these events. Donor visit to programs. Engaging donors in your event is a great way to keep them in touch with your programs. So constant engagement is key. Learn to communicate frequently with your donor. Celebrate successes. This is celebrating the success of their donation and reminding them of why they supported your organization in the first place. It is also pointing out that they made a wise and productive investment in your organization. So it's always good. Sometimes you send frequent messages telling them what has happened in your different engagement, the successes that you have achieved from the work you have done. So constant communication, donor relationship is very good in our work that we do. And also don't forget to tell them your challenges. I know we want to tell them the good part, but keeping them in constant relationship and building a good relationship with your donor. It's good to talk about your challenges. We need to communicate that. So some of our challenges we've encountered over the years, we know that funding comes to CSOs, especially women-led organization, is just project-based. It is not flexible to invest in any long-term sustainability initiative for CSO to increase income from their institution. So as you engage donor, you also need to inform them that funding should be sustainable and just not project-based, but as you build relationship with your donor, things can change that they can support your organization development or organization growth. So limited capacity to write technical proposals is something that you can say it, right? Technical proposal as required by the donor or as per the call for proposal. Most CSOs or women-led organizations don't have fundraising strategy or marketing strategy. And these are things we need to put in place. If you want to fundraise, building donor relationship and telling your stories, you must have a fundraising strategy or marketing strategy so that donors out there know what you are doing, how you want to engage, and will also be able to motivate them or create an emotional connection with donors using your story, using your strategy, and using your plan that you have. And weak internal governance systems serve as a challenge for resources mobilization or funding. So in building donor relationships, it should not only be a project based, but it should also be how you can work with donor to strengthen your internal system. And as I said from the beginning, you must have a clear and open communication. Women-led organizations, we have many challenges. And if we must continue our engagement, we have to let donors know some of those or the challenges that we are faced with and how we can be supported in those areas instead of just focusing on project-related activities. So some of the do's and don'ts.
Excuse me, Loretta,
Yes.
very sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you. Just to let you know that you have about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Yes, okay, thank you. So do have a realistic goals. There's a way to always step number one. You have to know what you plan on doing, who you plan on targeting for donors, your financial goal, and it's most importantly, why you are doing this. So it's also important. Don't get too greedy. The key is realistic. Find your goal and stick to it. Then we want to say, don't do it on your own. Fundraising is just like any other project. It has tons of moving parts and jobs to be done. And there's no way that you successfully do it on your own. Create a team of co-workers. So do give them a reason to give. So it's there. And then don't make giving a challenge. If a donor has to work to make a donation, then they aren't going to donate. Make donating simple through a variety of avenues. It's also stated there. Do acknowledge generosity. Most time we don't want to say thank you. We just want to receive our funding and don't remember to say thank you. That is also good. Do keep track of donors. When it comes to donors, you aren't finished until after a donation is made. Make a point to learn from that donor and every other donor. Keep a detailed list of their contact information and donor behavior so that you can rely on them as a resource of your next fundraiser or affiliate fundraisers. So some of our lesson learned is outlined there. We have described our organization relevance to the community in terms of our mission and purpose. As I said from the beginning, when you are pitching, you have to align your mission, your purpose and vision to the donor, align your organization inner cycle, your staff, your board, your volunteers around your mission, your vision, your organization. Define the key strategies, program activities for fulfilling your mission. Make clear the connection between your organization core cause and relevance to the community and interests of your current potential donor as well as the interests of other community stakeholders. List all your resources that will be required to implement strategies, programs, activities. Include a list of people. Don't just see call for proposal and you go for it. These are things that you should already have and you are working towards. Assign the cost of all your resources. Determine internally and informally how you will know and be able to show that you have accomplished what you set out to do. So I would here and I would say thank you again for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Loretta. All those practical tips are going to be really useful for many people here. Really appreciate that you could share your own experience with us and all the lessons learned you have. Next, we have a kind of an open discussion and question and answer session that my colleague Pius is going to lead us through. He is the regional gender focal point for FAO. And so thank you again, Loretta. I'll turn the microphone over to Pius.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you all for joining today. I'm sorry, it seems my camera is also not too clear. Pardon me for that. I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping. First of all, we're going to take a couple of questions. And so I would ask that if you have a question, kindly put your hand up, your virtual hand up. You can find it on the reactions button to raise your hand, and then we are going to call you one after the other. I also wanted to reiterate that all the presentations are going to be shared with participants as you've registered and we have your emails. And I also wanted to say that if you are called to take the floor, kindly speak up and then indicate who your question is going to go to, either Diana or Loretta. Thank you very much. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Before the first hand is raised, Natalie had a question. And although she didn't indicate who the question is going to go to, but I think it's going to go to Loretta. And she says, the question of gender mainstream often takes a long time, and it's often based on capacity building. Many PTFs often want to do it in a record time. How can we adapt? How can we adapt? Natalie, if you'd want to take the floor and mention who this question is directed to.
Bonjour.
I would really appreciate that. Bonjour, Nathalie.
Oui, bonjour, est-ce qu'on m'entend? Désolé, je ne vois pas lever de main, donc.
Good morning. Can you hear me? I'm not seeing any raised hands. I have two questions. My first goes to Diana, who is the first speaker. And my second question goes to the second speaker. I don't know if I should repeat the questions, but thank you.
Yes, I think so. I didn't get the question, please.
Well, the question was asking that how do you adapt to the fact that some donors would want the gender strategy or gender mainstreaming, which takes a long period of time done in a short time. How do you adapt?
So as I said from the beginning, we need to be clear in our communication. If you don't have a gender strategy, you have to be clear to say that you don't have this. A donor will not want to see an organization that has 100% or has the capacity 100%. So the way in which we need to communicate, it will become very clear to our donors. If you are writing a project and you find out that you have a capacity gap in not having a gender strategy or not having a clear marketing plan, it's something that you have to communicate, because you cannot be applying for a project and then when it comes to your institutional strengthening or the capacity, you don't have it. So if you want to align your funding to donor engagement, you should also ensure that you have the institutional capacity. So in order to engage effectively, you also need to communicate with your donor that you have challenges or weaknesses in these areas. And I think those donors will help to communicate, because most time women-led organization, we don't have funding because of so many reasons. We don't have the institutional capacity. We don't have those policies that we need. And these policies should be in place. These policies should be in place. So as we are struggling for funding, we also should ensure that our institutional capacity are also strengthened. So as I said, have a clear objective and a clear plan and communicate that with a donor.
Thank you very much, Loretta, and I hope the response was clear now. We have a hand up from Julie. Julie Weir, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor, and I'd like to thank Loretta and the previous presenter for sharing with us ideas on how to get funding for our work. But also, I just want maybe a little clarity from Loretta, for example. Most times, all of the tools that you've mentioned in talking about pitching and developing concept notes, and I'm happy that you also mentioned the issue of capacity. It said that you have to have all of the different requirements before you try to seek funding from a particular organization, because sometimes when you visit their website and you read on their requirements, they have a lot. And maybe if you are starting an organization, you may not have all of those in place. So if you have to have them, it will take you maybe years to do that. How do we reconcile that? And then the second thing is organizations, what can you recommend for organizations maybe who have already been engaged in working with donors, for example, like groups like FCI? What would be your recommendation to them in terms of building capacity for other smaller groups that are coming up? Because we see that people will say, okay, you have to work in a consortium. But if you are a small organization and you have some challenges, we don't see a lot of our groups who have already met up with some of those requirements, trying to work to build other smaller groups to get to that level. What would be a recommendation from you and maybe the other presenter to help us to be able to access donor funding? Thank you.
Okay, Julie, thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Can I continue?
Please, go ahead.
Oh,
yes,
okay,
please.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie, for that question. You know, I know we have bigger plans and we want to do bigger things, but I say to any organization, align your priorities with donor priorities. If you don't have those priorities or those things, most time you want to apply for funding, you should look at the criteria. What do the donor want? We just don't apply for funding because the funding is attractive, but we also need to take into consideration those priorities. Is it aligned with what I have in my mission? Is it aligned to what I have as an organization? Is it aligned to my priority in your pitching? So you just don't go for any call for proposal. That's what I said. They have organizations that support CSOs, organization development. Before you apply for grant or funding from a donor, you have to know what that funding is about and how it's aligned to your organization mission and vision. We just don't apply for anything or go for anything. So, for example, we're working in a forestry organization, working around forest, land issue, and conservation. And sometimes CSO go outside of their area of thematic focus and want to apply for a grant. However, we encourage CSOs to form consortiums and build on the expertise of each organization. You might be working in an area, but you have capacity gaps in some areas. So the reason why we encourage CSO to go into consortium is to build on the expertise of each organization. So FCI, for example, the Foundation for Community Initiative, has strength in gender mainstreaming, right? So organizations want to apply with us that are working in a sector on how do we mainstream gender in forest governance? How do we mainstream gender when it comes to conservation issue and environmental issue? Other organizations must have the strength in the legal framework. FCI don't have the strength in legal framework, right? Or FCI don't know everything about the law. So I want to partner with an organization that has strength, right, in the legal framework to support my engagement around my gender mainstreaming work, right? So it's always good to encourage us to form consortium, and just not forming consortium, but forming consortium on mutual understanding and respect. Most time we see that CSOs go into consortium, and at the end of the day, it does not work because of misunderstanding. There wasn't a clear MOU from the beginning, before your engagement, or before even doing the proposal or the concept note. So there must be a clear understanding. So we also want to recommend, as per Judy's question, how can we recommend to the donor, or what do we tell the donor in terms of encouraging donors? We need to be open. Donors need to open up ways in which CSOs' own priorities to affect their funding priorities. We also see that we always want to go for what donor want, but the most donors are not open to look at those priorities that we have as CSOs. And one thing I will encourage our donors to really be open up to look at our own priorities to affect our funding priorities. And another recommendation I think we can stress on is developing funding streams that are accessible to small informal organizations. Most of our donors put every one of us in one basket. They generalize the whole situation, and you have CSOs that have capacities at different levels. CSOs have capacity at different levels. For example, the EU grant, the capacity are so high. We have to apply with international organizations. It's just so hard for local CSOs in general to get EU grant directly. Then what's about women-led organization, right? So we need to find a way to encourage donors to make funding streams that are accessible to smaller CSO, informal groups, and other organizations, and then CSOs that have the capacity. Don't put every one of us in one basket. And another recommendation I think we can look at is to offer long-term, flexible, and co-funding to civil society organizations. And I'm always pushing for women-led organizations. Most of our funding you see now to CSOs, if you do an analysis of CSOs that are getting funding in the sector, you will realize that majority of those CSOs are getting funding in the sector are men-led organizations. And what are some of the issues? Sometimes where those calls for proposals are placed, we don't have access to them. You'll find out that men have access to those calls for proposals, or they will even have it on time. Sometimes before we get to come in contact with that call for proposal, it's either 1 week or 2 weeks. So
thank you very much.
Yes. Then the last recommendation I want to give to our donor, as per Judy request, we also want to say fund in a way that considers civil society as an ecosystem and invest in its diversity and resilience. So they need to open up, and I could give more recommendation, but because of time, I will stop here. And I hope I'll be able to address some of the questions. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. Thank you, Loretta. It shows that
just
we
to
have a lot to learn from you.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, sure, Diana, go ahead.
Just to add a little bit to the comprehensive list of suggestions Loretta has mentioned. I mentioned earlier in my presentation a number of funding sources. And if you realize from the presentation, we categorize them into different funding sources, from the large organizations to community kind of based sources for funding gender and forestry. And so depending on the size or requirements of the donor, we have different requirements for organizations that are sourcing for funds from these institutions. And for most of these donors, they have some minimum requirements or minimum standards in terms of gender mainstreaming. And it is important for you to know what these are beforehand, before you apply for funding from these institutions. As I said in the presentation, it is important to research the different funding sources to find a good fit, and then tailor your concept note or your proposal along the lines of what is required from the donor. Loretta mentioned provided a lot of examples or suggestions on how you can do this, but I also like to add the fact that you can also request for support from bigger organizations that have gender mainstreaming capacity that you are partners to. You can request for support from these institutions or organizations to help you to develop your proposals, to help you to target your concept notes in a way that will access funding from these institutions. We have a number of them. I'm sure FAO might have support for this kind of initiatives. WABILED has support, technical support for gender mainstreaming, etc. We have a lot of other CSOs in the countries that have higher capacity than smaller ones that can, provide that level of support for smaller organizations to be able to access funding. And as Loretta mentioned, working in a consortium helps you to be able to tap on these kinds of expertise from organizations that have a stronger gender mainstreaming capacity. So it's important to work with your partners, tap on the support that your bigger partners can give to you to be able to access funding for gender work. But in all of this, working in network, working in partnership, working in consortium is very important, so you can build on the different strengths that other organizations bring on board to be able to access funding. And then also looking for opportunities for, subcontracting, doing smaller things with other organizations, not just to be the main implementer of a particular activity, but subcontracting opportunities for implementing smaller interventions in your organization. And with time, that gives you capacity to be able to, transition from implementing small-scale projects to scaling up from larger gender interventions. So just to add to what Loretta said.
All right, thank you very much, Diana. Thank you very much, Loretta, for being elaborate. Amanda, I know time is up, but we have one more hand. Can you give us 1 minute and 30 seconds?
Really sorry, but we're very strict on the time here. But I would say, please, let's continue in the chat. Is it Natalie? If you could put your question in the chat if you haven't already, and then I would ask our speakers to please check the chat for the questions and see if you can respond directly there. I'm really sorry about the time, but I want to give enough time for our next speaker, who is Jose Martino. He's the communication specialist with FAO, and I know he has a really great presentation. He's going to give us a lot of practical ideas as well for improving our communications with donors and others. So thank you so much, Jose, for joining us. I turn it over to you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
It's clear.
Can you hear
yes.
me? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I think I'm not able to keep my camera on, so I just wanted to say hello. Hi. And then I will turn on my camera because the connection is not so good. Okay, let me know if I'm sharing my screen right now. Is it ready?
Yeah, it's great. If you can just put in the presentation mode, that would be perfect.
Yeah, just
Thank
let me
you.
know. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today, for joining us. My name is Jose, and I'm thrilled to be here to share insights on tailoring messaging for gender-based project funding. Today we'll explore how
We're having
we're living in such
some
yeah.
a bit
you
of
hear me?
trouble with the sound. Yeah, a
Oh,
bit of trouble
sorry.
with the
Can you hear me
sound.
now?
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
now it's okay.
Okay. Well, we're living in such a dynamic and fast world, right? We are surrounded by social media that puts in touch millions of people around the world from different backgrounds, languages, cultures, a digital world that's growing every day in terms of capacities. Even we're witnessing how their artificial intelligence is astonishing us with new applications and possibilities. So more and more an effective communication is one of the pillars for your success, for building relationships, trust, support from stakeholders, fostering collaboration, and navigating through the challenges, conflicts, and opportunities of a project. So, however, that communication must be strategically defined to promote our project. Above all, if we want to get support and funds. So where do we start? Well, basically, we need to design a communication strategy. So a communication strategy serves as a roadmap, ensuring consistent and impactful messaging that resonates with the target audience, fostering trust, clarifying the project's purpose, and eventually rallying support. So now you're going to have a look at the essential elements to get an effective communication and reach your supporters and funders. It's important to say, very important to say, that there are no magical recipes, right? Of course, you will find a lot of interesting experiences all over the world, but not all of them can relate to your project. This is a journey, and the key is to learn by doing and keep in touch with your audience. Understanding your audience. Know your purpose and audience is the first step. What do you need a clear and compelling purpose? Well, a well-defined purpose not only attracts support, but fosters a connection between partners, donors, supporters, and the project. Perhaps this sounds very obvious, but you need to remind it. You must start from this. Who is the audience? At the core of a clear and compelling purpose. So what do you want to achieve? So first, define the mission of your project. Supporters, funders want to know that the contributions matter. And in many cases, they need to show those contributions. So now, who are your thoughts? Who are target audiences?
Jose, I'm not sure if you're able to do anything, but the sound is very broken. We have trouble hearing you.
Partners, supporters, funders. You may be could be one of those examples, but most of the time, specific audience to reach. So, hello?
Okay,
Amanda,
go ahead.
can you hear me now?
No, it's okay. Yeah, we have a little bit of difficulty with the connection, I think. I think
Okay.
I'm not the only one, but please just speak
Okay.
slowly and yeah, if there's any way to, I don't know, be closer to the microphone or it's in and out, so.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, due to your purpose, you will have a very specific audience to reach. So for doing so, you must identify key demographics and stakeholders who are likely to resonate with the project. So this is intensive research at local, regional, even international level, depending on your aspirations and capacities. So thanks to internet, it's relatively easy to get that information. The key is to identify the right audience. So, for instance, if your project is about empowering women for leading community-based forestry initiatives, you must identify who is working or potentially interested on that topic. Step number 2, craft a compelling story telling your messages. Well, for thousands of years, humans evolved by inspiring and sharing knowledge through stories. It aimed not only to entertain or to gather people around a common goal, it was also for survival. And still, nowadays, people connect with the stories. This is how we interact and understand the world we're living in, through stories. Therefore, you must tell the story of your project and explore the elements of a compelling narrative. And as any of the story, you have to introduce the characters, who you are, establish a conflict. This is the problem or the challenge we want to face or address, and highlight the resolution your project brings, what you want to achieve, and how you can do it, thanks to the support of please note an important principle. Your projects and partners can help to make a difference. But the main character of the transformation, the main driver of it is decision, more accessible and
excuse me, sorry, Jose, but I'd say for the last minute or two, it's not.
real-life examples and success stories related. This is, for example, the other social media interact with the audience. Yeah.
We're having quite a bit of difficulty to hear you, Jose. Is there any other options for the audio?
Perhaps record my session in a more quiet area, and then perhaps share it with you, because I think I'm not able to improve my connection now. But I can record the presentation with my own voice, and I can deliver the speech, so you can perhaps watch it later.
Yeah, maybe that would be a better option, just
Okay.
because
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for this.
No, we understand.
I was not aware of this bad connection. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I know you're facing some challenges
Okay,
today.
I will
So
stop sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, I would suggest that, yeah, as Jose said, we'll be doing a recording of his presentation, and then we'll share it. I think we'll have everybody's emails from the registration, so we'll be sharing all the presentations with you by email, and I'll also share them through the community of practice through the chat. So yeah, sorry that today might not work out for that last presentation, but I'm really glad that we had the two excellent presentations from Diana and Loretta. I guess at this stage, I will move to wrap up, which will be by Edna Freeman from WABILED. So she, and maybe also with some support from Diana, will be wrapping up the session. So from my side, I'll close here, and thank you all again for attending. I turn it over to Edna.
Okay, thank you so much, Amanda and the team. And thanks everyone for their participation, sharing of ideas, and making this meeting very fruitful. We are grateful for your participation. But we know that and for the wrap up, we know that in spite of all limited funding opportunities for gender and forestry, we should know that there is donor interest for funding and addressing gender mainstreaming issues. We shouldn't forget that. Also, it means that we can be more aggressive and intentional when it comes in terms of addressing gender issues, women issues, forestry, and all other interventions. We should take note of that. Also, from Loretta's presentation, we should always keep in mind that when we are seeking for funding, we should develop the right fundraising strategy, and we should always align our priorities with the donors' priorities so that funding will be easier to get when our priorities are aligned correctly. And also one major thing we shouldn't also forget is communication issues. We should always maintain a good donor relationship through communication. Communication, we say, is the lifeline of every relationship. So we should always make sure we deliver on our promises that we give to the donor. Everything we put up in our presentations, we should make sure that we deliver on it. And even when we can deliver on it due to one or two things, we should be able to communicate with the donors, let them know whatever the issue is and how best we can resolve all these issues. This meeting has been very fruitful, and I believe everybody is taking one or two things home to help us in line of our agenda forestry mainstreaming. Thank you so much. Thank you for making this meeting a success. So if Diana or Pius can add on anything to it, then we will be done from here.
Okay, thank you so much, Edna. Pius, I'd just like to add some few points here. The fact that we plan organizing these meetings on a quarterly basis. So this particular meeting, as Al mentioned in the introduction, the topics for this meeting were generated based on the interest members showed through a survey that we did. Many people wanted to learn more about funding for gender and forest work. So we designed this particular meeting to meet that need. We are looking forward to meeting up again in the next quarter. And then because as a result, we'll be reaching out to everyone that is a member of the WhatsApp platform on gender and forest to suggest topics of interest for the next gender and forest networking meeting. For those of you who are not members of the WhatsApp platform, I suggest that for those of you who are not members but are interested in being members of the platform, I would suggest that you leave your names and numbers in the chat box so we can, add you up to the platform. It's an experience sharing platform for organizations, institutions that are working on the subject of gender and forestry. It helps us to discuss issues that are of interest, share our approaches, share resources. So if you are interested, leave your number and name in the chat box so we can facilitate your membership of the platform. So these are just a few points to add to what Edna said. And as I said, we're reaching out also to everyone who has been part of this meeting through email with their presentations. So you can add this to the pool of resources that you have. If there are questions, suggestions, comments for in the future outside of this meeting, kindly, get in touch through the WhatsApp platform or through your email contacts with myself or Amanda so we can continue the discussion from here to maintain a stronger network in support of gender mainstreaming in the context of forestry in West Africa. I join Edna to say thank you to all of you for your participation, and we look forward to future engagements. Thank you. So Pius, over to you. We have come to the end of the meeting.
All right, colleagues, thank you very much. I don't have any more to add as I'll open the webinar today. And so I would also ask Amanda to take over and then bring this to a close. Amanda?
Thanks, Pius. Yeah, no, thank you again, everybody, and we'll be in touch. We'll look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Have a good rest of your day.